All right, so let's unpack a pretty major development in the publishing world today. If you follow the manga or light novel industry, you are definitely familiar with Seven Seas Entertainment. Since 2004, they have been this primary gateway for readers looking for distinct, fan-favorite storytelling. But the big headline we are looking at today is a massive shakeup. Seven Seas has been acquired, and the price tag attached to this deal is, honestly, it's staggering.
Yeah, it really is. We are looking at a deal valued at right around 12.4 billion yen,
Wow.
which when you convert that, it lands roughly around 80 million US dollars.
80 million.
Yeah.
That is a massive valuation for a company known for catering to very specific and, often niche interests. For those of you listening who might just be getting into this, Seven Seas is famous for things like Danmei.
Right, the Chinese romantic literature.
Exactly. Which has completely exploded in popularity lately, along with manga and webtoons. So when a buyer like MediaDo International drops $80 million on a portfolio like that, it signals something pretty significant about the market.
It really tells us that these niche genres are moving into an entirely different weight class financially. I mean, MediaDo International isn't just picking up some small indie press. They are making a substantial strategic investment.
The scale of that $80 million figure suggests they see long-term high-yield value in the content Seven Seas curates.
Right, but this is usually where the skepticism kicks in, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
We have seen this story play out a dozen times. A corporate giant buys a beloved indie label, promises nothing will change, and then 6 months later, the efficiencies kick in.
Yeah, the quirky, risky titles get cut in favor of mass market hits.
Exactly. So why should we believe this situation is any different?
Well, that is completely the rational fear to have. Usually, an acquisition of this size comes with a cleaning house phase where the new owners install their own management to maximize profits. However, the structure of this specific deal is really interesting because it seems designed to prevent exactly that. The current leadership team isn't just cashing out and
I'm
leaving.
talking about the founder.
Yeah, Jason DeAngelis founded the company back in 2004, and he is retaining his role. He explicitly stated that this partnership is about safeguarding creative freedom. He really framed the deal not as an exit strategy, but as a way to treat the stories with care, respect, and passion.
Safeguarding creative freedom. That is a very specific choice of words.
It is.
It implies that the purpose of the sale wasn't just profit, but protection. But we also know founders often stay on for a transition period before quietly exiting. Is there anything operational that suggests the status quo is actually safe?
Well, if you look at the logistics, Penguin Random House is going to remain their global distribution partner. That is crucial because it means the supply chain.
Like the actual mechanics of how a book gets from the printer to your hands.
Exactly. That isn't being disrupted. MediaDo isn't trying to jam Seven Seas into a new, unfamiliar distribution network.
Okay, so the boss stays, and the distribution creates a buffer. But the real proof is always in the product. If they were going to pivot towards safer, more generic content to recoup that $80 million, we would likely see a shift in their licensing announcements. Do we have any data on what is coming down the pipeline?
We do, and it actually points in the exact opposite direction of playing it safe. Just recently, at CitrusCon 2026, Seven Seas announced a new slate of titles that are very much deep cuts for their core audience.
What specifically are they pushing?
They highlighted 3 new licenses for late 2026, Stranger, a Western BL in November, and then Marchen and Wolfhound both coming in December.
That is interesting. Stranger being a Western BL, meaning boys love produced in the West rather than imported from Japan, is arguably a riskier, more experimental category than standard manga.
Precisely. If they were pivoting to mass market efficiency, you would expect them to focus solely on established Japanese blockbusters. But by highlighting a Western BL title alongside fantasy titles like Marchen and Wolfhound, they're signaling a continued commitment to diverse formats like webtoons and Danmei. They aren't shrinking the tent, they are reinforcing the pillars that hold it up.
So if we look at the timeline, November and December of 2026 for these releases, it seems the strategy is basically business as usual, just with a much deeper bank account.
That is the best way to view it. The $80 million infusion acts as a safety net. It allows the beloved crew currently running the ship to take the same creative risks they always have, but without the existential financial dread that usually hangs over independent publishers.
It creates an air of optimism.
Right, an air of optimism that they can focus on variety rather than just survival.
It completely changes the calculus from, can we afford to print this obscure title, to how do we best market this obscure title?
Exactly. It reinforces their long-term goals by removing the short-term volatility.
So here is the big question to chew on as we wrap up this deep dive. We have established that the money brings stability and protects the current mission. But consider this for a second. With an $80 million safety net, the risk of a single commercial flop isn't nearly as dangerous as it used to be. The source material mentions an era of optimism and greater variety in genres.
Right.
Does this financial security mean we might actually see Seven Seas get more experimental? Could this allow them to license avant-garde or extremely niche formats that even they couldn't afford to touch before? That is the space I will be watching. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.